So here's the key. We don't need to say that those are dangerous or toxic. Masculinity is a virtue that requires men to be noble, to be upright, to protect when needed, to lead when needed, to be assertive when needed, to be that man of virtue that takes responsibility for his life, to be a damn good man. Gentlemen, what's going on? It is an abnormal Christmas day here in the Midwest. It's usually in the 40-degree weather wise, but today mid-70s, man. We're out playing in shorts and shirt, playing basketball and baseball with my son. This is the Better Man channel where we embrace the abnormal. We don't let our emotions get involved when the unpredictable happen, when change happens, when things that are out of our hands occur. And so something that's out of my hands that raised a little emotions, a little passion earlier, I came across two videos on YouTube. I'm subscribed to these two channels, and within minutes they both popped up, and one was titled like The Dangers of Masculinity, and another one was Toxic Masculinity. And neither one of them really refuted the idea that masculinity is toxic. There was no rebuttals. And while the one channel was just showing interviews on the streets, showing that people couldn't really give a clear definition of what toxic masculinity was, the other one was straight saying that there are some dark, dangerous, toxic sides to masculinity. And so that kind of stirred up some emotions within me, man. One of the themes of this channel, and to be a better man, is to embrace masculinity. What the hell does it mean to be masculine? I'm tired of the life that I've lived where, for lack of a better word, I've just been a weak-ass boy, man. I haven't taken responsibility for life, for my actions. I haven't taken responsibility for even the things that are out of my hand. I've made excuses. Well, what the hell is that going to do for me? We see a culture today that's pointing fingers and making excuses, and it's easy and we're quick to say, oh, they're ignorant. But what about in my own life, those ignorant excuses that I've came up with? No longer, man. I don't want to be a part of that. And so this sparked up some emotions, man. And first and foremost, masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is a virtue. And you may be scratching your head, a virtue? What do you mean? The Latin word virtue derives from the root word ver meaning man, manhood, masculinity. Those that came up with that idea of virtue meant that it's a man quality, to be noble, upright, of good virtue, of good calling, to do the next good thing in your life. That was part of being a man. And so it evolved into the idea of morality, and to be more moral and upright, and moved away from its root word of being manhood. But masculinity in and of itself is a virtue that they came up with to describe characteristics that a man should possess. And not only a man, but society in general as well. And that's where it evolved into morality. But much like patience is a virtue, therefore patience can't be toxic, masculinity is a virtue and it cannot be toxic either. Now, men can be toxic. A man can be an asshole chauvinist, much like a woman, a feminist, can be an extreme feminist, asshole, ignorant person. Men and women can be assholes. Being masculine or being feminine is never toxic. And the dark and dangerous sides that they want to say that masculinity possesses, such as assertiveness and dominance, well, we admire those, even applaud those in situations that those are needed, such as a police force or the army, or if someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night, you want a man that's assertive and dominant. We applaud those. So here's the key. We don't need to say that those are dangerous or toxic. Masculinity is a virtue that requires men to be noble, to be upright, to protect when needed, to lead when needed, to be assertive when needed, to be that man of virtue that takes responsibility for his life, to be a damn good man. Masculinity is never toxic. There are flawed men. There are flawed women. There are flawed individuals. Again, any virtue, such as patience or respect or reverence. They are never toxic. Masculinity is the very definition of virtue. That's what the word came from. It's never toxic in and of itself. Now, the men behind masculinity may be toxic because they are flawed individuals. Let's not call masculinity toxic. Let's not call the characteristics of masculinity toxic. Let's say that some men are flawed. Some men are assholes. Let's not call a feminine woman toxic. Let's not call a woman wanting to embrace womanhood toxic. Now let's call extreme feminists that want to destroy the world and all men a little crazy, a little toxic. But the very word feminine, the very word masculine, there's no toxicity in those because it cannot exist in a virtue in and of itself. Whew, there's some passion, some emotion in that, man, because we can't continue to have these conversations where both sides are saying, okay, yeah, there is some dangerous and toxic sides to masculinity. No, there's not, right? There's men that maybe not know how to handle assertiveness, dominance, aggression in a productive manner. But there are times that aggression is needed. There are times when assertiveness is needed. There are times when men need to lead. There is time when the very virtue of masculinity is needed, and that time is every damn day. We need more noble people. We need more noble men. But how do we expect the men, the young men in this generation, to embrace masculinity if we keep saying that it's toxic, that there are dangerous qualities to it, that you're not supposed to be assertive, that you're not supposed to lead, that you're not supposed to protect? And then we see the extreme leftist, liberal, feminist women saying, well, there's no good men out there. Well, because you've deconstructed the very idea of what it means to be man. You've said you're independent, but now you want a man that can lead, that can be assertive, that does have some value. But we've stripped away the very meaning of what it means for man to embrace value, assertiveness, dominance, leadership, protection. We've called that toxic, and we wonder why our world's falling apart. We wonder why there's a plethora of women looking for the good men out there. Air quotes, good men. Those good men have been marginalized because you're deeming masculinity as toxic and you don't even know what the very word means. It means virtue. So how about instead of teaching our men not to be masculine, we teach them not to be assholes. We teach them what it means to be respectful, upright, noble. And why don't we teach our women what it means to respect a masculine man? And then we teach our men to respect a feminine woman. And we find that middle ground, that dynamic where they're supposed to coexist and intersect and interplay. And it's this beautiful, harmonious yin and yang instead of this constant chaos where we're pitted against each other. And I don't care if you want to say it's the government or if it's this culture, this race, this gender, but someone is pitting us against each other and it's stripping away the very nature of what we're supposed to be. Masculine men, feminine women, interplaying in this killer, beautiful, amazing story. But we've tore that down because masculinity is now toxic. Masculinity cannot be toxic. It is a virtue of men being upright, noble, protectors, leaders. And you may say, well, I don't need any man to lead me if you're a woman. Well, you need strong, assertive men to protect your country that you live in, where you have the right to call men toxic. Assertiveness, dominance, leadership, aggression is needed. What we need to be teaching is how you keep that in a balance with being also a man of value, of nobility, a man that's not a chauvinist, a man that's not an asshole, a man that's not arrogant. We need to see a society on both sides, men and women, embracing both the feminine quality and the masculine qualities for what they are, virtues, man. They're strengths. There's something that should be applauded on both sides. We need to tear down the walls where we're saying, oh, it's dangerous, and we've graffitied all over the wall of masculinity that's dangerous, that it's toxic, that we don't need it. And we wonder why we see a weak culture. We wonder why we see weak men. We wonder why we see our world turned upside down, where men are resigning to the sidelines saying, I don't want any part of that because your behaviors toward me saying that I'm toxic just breeds this toxic environment, and I'd rather just go my own way. And we see that in life. We see that on both sides. We see this aggression towards both sexes from both sides because we don't know what the hell we're talking about. That's what it comes down to. You have these loud voices proclaiming both sides wrong and both sides toxic, and they really don't know what they're talking about. Masculinity is a virtue that shouldn't be embraced. Masculinity is something deep down within every man to a higher calling, to be upright, to be noble, to be a damn good man. I don't care how good you think you are, if you're not embodying those traits of masculinity, to be noble, to be strong, to be assertive, to be man, then you're not truly a man, because that's what it means, and we can't tear that down. We can't tear it down, or we see weak men, we see weak culture. We need men to be men. We need to know what the very definition of masculinity means. In some of those comments, I started looking on one of the videos, and it was largely proportionate in women's comments that were saying, masculinity to me means a tall man, deep voice, and all these physical traits. Masculinity is not a physical trait. It's a virtue, much like patience. It can't be toxic because it's not this physical external thing. It's an internal virtue where it calls you to be good, upright, and noble, to be the strong, responsible man that takes ownership of his life. We're teaching boys that you have to be 6'4" with a 6-figure salary and blah, blah, blah. And that's not the value of a man. Yes, let's strive for good lives. Let's strive to be wealthy and intelligent and strong and healthy. But at the core of it, be a damn good man that takes ownership of his life with responsibility, with integrity. And let's promote that in society today. Let's promote men that are masculine and strong and have that aggression in check. They know when to use it. They know when to restrain it. Let's teach men to be men. Let's teach women to be women. Let's kick ass and take back our society, our culture, our tradition, and own life, man. I love you guys. You'll hear from me next episode.